Hello and welcome to my next 5 tips video for Stellaris. This will be for the 2.3.3 patch, although I started this playthrough on 2.3.2. I was just looking at the patch notes, the dev diary, where they talked about the big differences, and it seems like most of it was focused on bug fixes. There were a couple balancing changes. I think the biggest one for me was that it looks like it'll be easier for you to level up your admirals, which is, I think, a really welcome change. I have a lot of leaders in this playthrough that I think have been at war for most of their life, and they're like almost 200 years old, so it would be nice for some of them to be a little bit higher level. Like, yeah, this guy's ancient. He's been fighting in a lot of my wars, so he should definitely be a little bit higher level. With that being said, I think we're ready to jump into the tips that I've learned over the course of this playthrough and my experience with basically 2.3. And yeah, my first tip is ring worlds are actually a lot better than I initially thought. At first I thought the Dyson spheres and the matter decompressors got the biggest buff in terms of all the megastructures, but I think when you actually look at how districts work, these ring worlds are incredibly powerful. This one right here, I think, is my biggest planet with our biggest ring world section, and it's making 1,000 something, 1,000 plus research across the board, which is just so nice. It's so incredible. And yeah, if you can get a lot of those in a very powerful sector, you can get a lot of research very quickly. Compared to the AI, that's going to be something that gives you a pretty massive upper hand. If you're in a multiplayer setting, it may not be the best strategy because it requires a lot of alloys, and I know alloys are very important in multiplayer, more so than in single player, because the AI doesn't know when you're focusing on the late game. They just kind of treat everybody the same. So ring worlds may not be quite as useful in multiplayer, but I still think they are incredibly useful and something that you should aim to try and get in a multiplayer game, but only in a safe situation. Maybe not get 10 or so by this point in the game like I have. I don't know if I have 10, but I've definitely got at least 3 completed ones, and I'm working on 4 or 5. My 4th or 5th one right now. So yeah, that's that for that tip. Tip number 2 is that you should try to rush to your admin cap as soon as possible. That will give you a lot of anomalies and a lot of archaeology sites, which is going to also allow you to expand a little bit more peacefully. If you have all that space, you can just kind of grab the empty systems around you versus having to fight people. If you can just grab a bottleneck and block people off, all of this space all of a sudden becomes yours. There's a little nation in here that was very powerful compared to me, almost completely destroyed what I had. They claimed, I think, every last system that I owned, and I was just barely able to get these guys in a federation and these guys in a federation to fight them off before we were obliterated. So I think that's part of why I actually like how well this playthrough went. In a lot of ways, this is the strongest fleet that I had at this point in the game, but this playthrough went really poorly, and usually if a playthrough goes poorly, I'm not able to regain my foothold, and I think a large part of that was due to the fact that I grabbed enough space early that I could get some benefits, some relics, to keep me competitive until I could get those ring worlds up and running. But if I didn't have the just raw resources, I don't think that I would have lasted past that mid game with I think the Knights of Wind to the south of me causing me issues. So that's that for that tip. Tip number 3 is sectors are incredibly powerful if you can get enough planets in them and the right leaders in charge. My main sector right here has a lot of planets. I think we are able to grab a lot of little systems that I haven't even put people on all the planets, but we grabbed, I don't know how many planets, but we focused them all on research, and we got a really good leader for research. We got this immortal caretaker who is at level 10 and will always be at level 10, allowing us to build things quickly and get a lot of research out of them. I think that it's part of why our research is so high on that ring world, because we have a really nice governor in charge of it. I love that governor. The fact that he's immortal is really nice. We have another one over here who is, I think, newer to the game with the Ancient Relics DLC. The Oracle is so nice, giving you that plus 10 stability and extra unity is very useful. So basically I had one sector mostly focused on research, another one mostly focused on unity, which allowed me to just power through my unity, my tradition tree and my research, which is something that the AI is not so great at. So it allowed me to get those ring worlds and things like that a little bit before they had any opportunity to do that. I don't think the AI actually builds ring worlds in the current build, which would be interesting to see if they change that and how more competitive that would actually make the AI. I hope they do that, but who knows. So yeah, that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is basically Imperialism is really good in the early game, and Egalitarianism is really good in the late game. I thought about actually shifting from my my authoritarian ways into egalitarianism so that we could get the extra bonus for specialist production, to get more research, to get more unity. After I had those leaders, I was just like, well, it would be really nice to get even more bonuses on my production, but we already had a lot of slaves, and I didn't want to get rid of the give them rights basically, because they would have formed a lot of factions, caused a lot of internal struggle, and my stability would not be at 100% everywhere. Probably not. It would definitely be lower, and I do like having max stability. That extra bonus to resource production is amazing. So maybe if I didn't conquer as many people, I would have switched into egalitarianism. I think it's very situational, and if you can play as an egalitarian from the early parts of the game, that definitely has its own benefits, but it's definitely a trickier way. I think it's kind of like a challenge. If you want to try and do something a little bit more challenging, try egalitarian from the very beginning of the game. If you want something interesting, try shifting into egalitarianism. It's probably a little bit better than you might be thinking at this point in time. Now, I think we're ready for our last tip, which is how slaves don't affect stability. If I click on here, let's go see, where is it? What's their effect on this? They do have a effect. It's not nothing. It's just almost negligible if you take care of them properly. There are definitely going to be some planets where the slaves have more of an influence on how things are done, but not all of them are going to be that bad. If you give your people the citizen rights and you put them in charge of the planet, their weights will outweigh the slaves and everything like that. If you put the slaves on domestic servitude, the slaves will always have a job. So even the ones that were in charge of the planet, the ones that were rulers, they just become a very generic pop that you can instantly control. On top of that, if you got these psychic telepaths, they're gonna reduce the crime a whole bunch. But yeah, that requires you sending some of your own pops over. Kind of hard to do earlier in the game. Works pretty well in the late game for those imperialists who who don't want to shift into egalitarianism. So that's something that I'll be playing around with more in the future. One of the things I did notice that the egalitarians have access to is utopian abundance. It costs a lot to maintain a lot of consumer goods. If you're later in the game, you definitely can make it work. But what's really nice is that you don't have to have buildings to get research and unity. So very, very cool. If you go the egalitarian path, you have that option. If you go the slavery route, you can turn all of your conquered people into domestic servitude, just to keep them from you know, not having jobs. This one's nice because it gives you extra resource production, but this one keeps them from being a problem. I think if you also look underneath the factions, they don't affect the faction support. So yeah, no little factions are generated when you conquer people. Since we conquered so many people, if I shifted into egalitarian, it'd automatically generate like a xenophile faction. Or who knows what else. But I think we have some people that we've conquered. Yeah, I'd probably create a materials faction, and I don't want that. That doesn't sound like fun. We definitely have the ability to shift into egalitarian. One of the nice things about authoritarian is it gives you the ability to do that. I didn't always look at it this way, but it gives you ability to do that by giving you a slight push towards egalitarianism if you have an autocratic government. It also creates some support, but it also creates some tension, which is I think different than egalitarianism. They're easier to stay in the whole like freedom route. It's harder for them to shift into slavery, and like, why would they? It makes a lot less sense for them to do that, especially with how the, you know, base resources become less useful over time. But that's all the tips I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and to comment, maybe share with a friend. We'll be doing some more Stellaris content on the channel over the next month or two. That's the current plan. I have a video a day going up for this playthrough, and I also will be doing some Banner Battle Brothers on the side at the same time. When I get back from vacation in August, I'll be doing some Age of Wonders Planetfall. I'm super excited to play that, and hope you are interested in seeing a tips video for that, because I'll definitely be doing one for that as soon as I possibly can. See you around. Have a good one.